It is a DC Sports Huddle sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fans paradise. A lot to get to. Let's cut to the chase. It's week one of the NFL season. How did we survive this long without it? The NFL is back. The Washington Commanders, Jacksonville Jaguars. Rob Woodfork has his WTOP.com preview. I'm halfway through. I'm sure by week 8, I'll finish the rest of the preview because it's so comprehensive. It covers everything. And we'll get right, as I said, cut to the chase. Washington Commanders, a lot of focus on Carson Wentz. As you note in your preview, which I actually printed out, I don't know if you can see the paper right here, that you said, Rob Woodfork, I'm betting that Carson Wentz, 4 years of inconsistency, is not an outlier. Is that your words, correct? Rob
Correct.
Woodfork, you think that's so? I'm going to disagree with you. I believe that Carson Wentz is going to find his form with the Washington Commanders because he has Terry McLaurin as a target. Last season, so often you're thinking, just get the ball to Terry McLaurin. I think McLaurin is going to help resurrect Carson Wentz's career, and the resurrection of Carson Wentz is going to help the Washington Commanders immeasurably. That is my opinion. Your opinion, Rob Woodfork, it would seem to me as we start this conversation, which focuses on Carson Wentz and the Commanders, differs, as I've seen on WTOP.com.
All right. So I'm going to give you a reason why I think you're right. And I'm going to give you a reason why I think you're wrong. And I'm going to give
he appreciates that. He appreciates that.
Hey, man,
cover all the bases. Yes.
This is WTOP. We do the equal time thing. So, all right. So the reason why I think that could be true is because I've heard from people who are not associated with the organization and do not have any skin in the game that this offense is a better fit for what Carson Wentz does well. And that is getting the ball vertical. That is getting the ball downfield. He's got the arm. Everybody's been talking about that. So I could see a scenario in which in this variation of the Eric Coryell offense, he actually thrives and plays well. And we see a version of him that we haven't seen maybe ever. My pushback on that, though, is the quarterback position is a very inherently cerebral position. And so if your head's not right, if you're going out there trying to prove something to people or prove something to yourself, even worse, then I don't know if you can be as successful as Washington needs him to be in order for them to have the kind of season that they want. So nobody's ever had a question as to whether or not Carson Wentz has the physical tools to be a great quarterback. The question has been, does he have the right mental makeup? And that's what at age, I think he's going on 29 now. If you're still asking that question at 29, it's probably not going to be the answer you want.
All right, Dave Preston.
Well, I think it's unfair when you talk about somebody's cerebral capabilities. Let's forget the fact that as a rookie, he was locked inside a gas station bathroom. Let's just completely forget that about Carson Wentz. That was the Carson Wentz of years ago. I think that Carson Wentz will have a decent year for the Commanders. He has more weapons this year. He has more firepower surrounding him than he did when he was in Indianapolis. From a passing game perspective, yes, the running back is a little bit different this year than last. But I think you don't play the game in a vacuum. And I think that so many games this year, he will be asked to rally this team because I don't think the defense is up to snuff. I think there are problems with this Commanders team in the secondary and in the linebacking core. And I'm not convinced that a pass rush without Chase Young will be worth its salt to take heat off of either. So I think that, yes, Carson Wentz will have a good year statistically. At the end of the season, you'll say, well, he had decent numbers. But I think so many of those numbers will be earned trying to rally from double-digit deficits. And so I think all in all, he won't have a successful season, while on paper he will. And I think it's going to be, I could easily see 2 or 3 guys starting at quarterback for the Commanders this year, because that's what we've seen the last few seasons.
All right, we're about 5 minutes of the show. I already have a headache. George Wallace?
Hey, you haven't had to watch all of training camp, so
yeah,
come on. No, I think it's kind of bizarre. So I think that there's no hype around Carson Wentz, right? The guy's a legit decent quarterback. Okay. But I think that the way he was kind of thrown upon us by this organization, I see fans think of the other sexy names that are out there, and Carson Wentz is kind of a boring guy. right? He's not flashy, and I think that's kind of what fans are looking for. For me, I honestly think that he's going to have a decent year. I mean, yes, he is what he is. He's a 60% completion quarterback, but last year he was 27-7 touchdowns and interceptions, and he had the issue at the end of the year. Third opening day with 30 different teams. I get all that, but I think that he is a solid quarterback, and I think with the weapons that he has, and there are weapons on this team, I think you are going to see a different and somewhat dynamic offense than what we have seen in the past. Jahan Dotson has been impressive, the rookie early on. Logan Thomas is working his way back. I still think he plays Sunday. He said, if not this week, then definitely next week. So I think he's very, very close to playing. And then, of course, you got Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, who says he feels great. So, I think this offense does have a chance to be pretty dynamic. And I think Carson Wentz is going to prove a lot of people wrong. And I think he is going to have a solid year because, well, look, as far as Ron Rivera is concerned and the rest of this front office, they got no choice because this is it. I mean, this is year 3. You went out on a limb and said, this is our guy, whether you believe it or not. Like I said last week, whether you believe it or not, this is what you're throwing on us. So I think he will be ready. I think Scott Turner is going to have a much more fun time this year calling plays because of what he has on offense.
Well, is that part of my point? Last year, there was time. It seemed like we could compete with Taylor Heineke with his hair on fire. Carson Wentz is not going to have his hair on fire, so he just needs to be solid. He has weapons around him. If he gets protection, this team can compete. Or did I just say
I agree. I was agreeing with you, Dave. I'm not agreeing with the other guy.
Part of Carson Wentz's problem, though, is sometimes his hair is on fire when there's not even an active flame there. Sometimes he's, to borrow the phrase about a certain Jets quarterback, sometimes he sees ghosts when maybe some stuff isn't there. So that's the thing. Again, it's not that he's not capable physically. As a matter of fact, it's not even that he's not capable mentally. It's a matter of whether or not they unlock him and he allows himself to thrive in this offense, because certainly it shapes up in a way, both in terms of the personnel and the scheme, for him to be successful.
I tell you throw the ball left-handed from your own end zone once, and everybody remembers that.
We haven't even talked about
all the times he did not throw the ball left-handed from his own end zone.
And also, as they were about to face the Jaguars here, the one win Washington has gotten on opening day in the last 7 years happens to be against Carson Wentz when he was throwing the ball to the other team and let him back into the game when they started fast. So there's a little bit of history there, both on that other sideline and in terms of Carson Wentz and how he plays at FedEx Field.
And how Carson Wentz plays against Jacksonville. Is anybody bothered by the fact that
Exactly.
well forward the Colts at Jacksonville, and that's going to be his first assignment? Maybe that color scheme alone is going to sidetrack him.
That's why he's here. That's why he's here.
You're right. Exactly.
All right. So we focused on Carson Wentz. We can differ on that. Well, I mean, but we should be worried about the defense, right? Chase Young missing.
I am.
I mean, this is okay. Continue.
Yeah, I mean,
you're worried why?
Well, first of all, you don't have Chase Young for the first, and we can talk about what he is or isn't at this point in his career. At the very least, he's a guy who you have to pay attention to as the opposing offense. So, I don't know who's coming off the edge on the other side of Montez Sweat that's going to scare you. So, I mean, that just kind of changes the way that other teams have to play them. And let's be real. I mean, probably more than Carson Wentz, this Washington defense has something to prove, because you can't go from what they were in 2020. Just to circle back to that season opener against Philly, they had 8 sacks in that game. And I know that the Eagles were really banged up on the offensive line and all that's fine, but they had 8 sacks in that game. They played really well in 2020, and then they laid an absolute turd in 21. So you have to come out and put your best foot forward against what, is still kind of a rookie quarterback over there on the Jacksonville side.
All right.
Turds everywhere were just insulted by that comment because, I think when we looked at what happened, granted, every year is different and every preseason is different than the regular season. But when there's a common thread, there's a concern. Last season, Washington, second to last in the league, I believe, at getting off the field on third down. In August, when they faced other first strings, they could not get off of the football field. Now, Trevor Lawrence, second-year guy. So he's not Patrick Mahomes, so to speak, but still, this defense needs to prove itself in week 1 for me to have confidence in what they can do. And a Washington defense that performs will give Carson Wentz shorter fields. He'll give him more opportunities and won't give him 10-point deficits to try to climb out of. And right now, I'm not confident the Commanders defense can do that.
George Wallace.
Yeah, and I think that was a concern in the preseason for sure, especially that first game, giving up 3 or 4 first downs to the Panthers, or third downs in that opening drive. I think that is a concern. But you know, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and see. I think this defense is as you have to be better than last year, and I think that on the back end, I think you're still pretty strong. I still put I'd put anything up against Payne, Sweat, Jonathan Allen up front. I mean, these guys, they have something to prove. As I've mentioned before, they're all come from winning programs. Like, they are not accustomed to losing. They have a chip in their shoulder. So, and they realized last year was a disaster. So I think you're going to see a different type of effort this year on the defensive end. And it's, as we've heard all throughout this week out there, week 1 is such a crapshoot. Basically, you have limited tape. Yeah. You know what Trevor Lawrence is everybody has said he's the complete package. Jack Del Rio talking about it today, and you just got to be, on your assignments, basically. Kendall Fuller was saying that yesterday. You can't go on much, but you have to tighten up on your end, and you have to have great communication, which they have all said to a man has been better this year. Why that was an issue last year, communication wise, you would think, forget scheme wise, but communicating, you shouldn't need much time to get that down packed. So I think they've all mentioned that this summer, as far as being improved on the defensive end.
Yeah,
George, you and I have been doing this long enough, and we have been watching this team long enough to know that you just jinxed the hell out of them by saying, well, they can't be worse, can they, than they were last year? I mean, if there was another rung that is below where they've ever been, they can find it. That has been proven over the course of the last 25 years.
Yeah, but we got to believe, look, we can all talk on Zoom, so you got to be better communication, right? But also, I'm just asking for the Washington defense to be, they don't have to be spectacular. How about just mildly mediocre?
Yeah.
Don't give up the big play.
I think that's the thing that fans can take heart in, is that Washington has had the absolute worst statistical quarterback play over the course of the last 2-3 seasons. So you figure you don't have to go out there. You don't have to be, Dallas or Tampa Bay and average 30 points a game. You just need to go out there and just be better and more efficient. And if your defense is just middle of the road, that's a competitive team. So, no, they don't have to be top 10, but they certainly have to get off the field on third down, which they haven't. That's something that's seeped into the preseason this year. That should have been job 1 in the offseason, is make sure our third downs are just tight, and we haven't really seen that yet.
By the way, real quick, I will say,
I'm fearing there'll be roadkill.
Cam Curl, if his thumb is not ready for Sunday, then you're going to see a lot of Jeremy Reeves. That you're already starting with something that's not the greatest of news, but we'll see.
And Jeremy Reeves, look, he's a great feel-good story. I'm glad he's on the team, but that is a massive downgrade at a position of absolute need for Washington.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it brings me back to why we should use a hashtag mildly mediocre for the Washington defense. That's all I want. They do not have to be, as Rob said, they do not have to be a top 10. Just how often did we hear last year of defensive breakdowns? Players were trying to do too much. They didn't stay within their discipline. Right. Don't do too much. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what my Algebra 2 teacher said to me before he failed me. So, I mean, it's the same principle. Just be mildly mediocre, and let's see where this goes. Okay, we'll go small picture, big picture. Do they win this?
Mildly mediocre? What are they going to do this year?
Yeah. Right. Well, first, let's just take it a week at a time. Now, we're not going to go over all 18 weeks now that the football season goes into next July. But let's just take this week against Shaq. George Wallace, win or lose Sunday.
This is the biggest must-win you've ever heard of or seen in week 1. I cannot underplay it enough. I've said it the first 2 weeks. I've said it since July. This is the must-win situation. It doesn't matter. You could win 12-10, but you cannot lose to Jacksonville at home. I don't care how improved Jacksonville is.
Okay.
But Doug Peterson is Coach Carson Wentz. Doug Peterson knows this team. I'm very, very worried about Jacksonville. I think Washington escapes, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than it should be. It's going to, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be something crazy like 16-13. It's going to be that close, but it doesn't matter. You just need to win, or else next week, oh my God.
Dave Preston.
I have 20-18, a last second field goal connected by the Burgundy and Gold, a game where they are frustrating us to all ends of the earth for 58 minutes, and somehow they come back and win it. And half of the fan base is like, oh, all is good. And then they wind up losing at Detroit. So 20-18 Burgundy and Gold wins.
All right. You cheated. You went ahead to week 2. Rob Woodfork.
And in week 18,
you pulled a Jay Brooks.
he pulled a Jay Brooks, right?
All right. So unfortunately, I don't think they're going to win this game. I think this is going to be a Jacksonville 21-17 kind of game. Washington doesn't start seasons fast. And I hate to apply Gruden logic to Ron Rivera, but I mean, they haven't been any great shakes in week 1, even in the 2 years that we've had a Ron Rivera week 1. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to come out with some stuff that they didn't really see in the preseason. I think the defense is going to have some issues, especially if Cam Curl ends up not playing. And quite frankly, I think Wentz needs some time. I mean, I know he got some reps in the preseason, but I still think he's going to need a game or two to really start to look like a guy who's the starting quarterback of a potential playoff team. So I have them losing in week 1, and just to be consistent, I picked them to lose week 1 as I went week by week in my NFL preview.
On WTOP.com to be consistent.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. All right. I started this by saying that I believe that Carson Wentz is going to do well with Terry McLaurin. I think that'll come into place on Sunday. I'm not that sold on the Jacksonville secondary. I think Washington wins 24-20. I think it will be an escape. So we've done that. Week 1, we have 3 wins and 1 loss for Rob Woodfork. As always, Rob will probably be right, and he'll rub it in our faces next week. But anyway, we're going to stick with the victories. The season predictions for the whole season. Rob, we'll start with you. Give me a record. Now, according to this, have you changed? 7-10 was in your WTOP.com preview.
As a matter of fact, I usually won't change my mind on this stuff until mid-season. If I'm still alive, like they could start, 7-0, and I'm still gonna. I'm not dead yet, as it pertains to the 7-10 prediction. So I have them going 7-10. They do have a winnable schedule, and there is a path to them winning 10 instead of losing 10, and that's something I feel like I say about them every year. Because it's not like the cupboard is bare. If injuries break their way, if Carson Wentz is better than I think he is, then there's a path to them winning 10 games and maybe even being a wild card and hanging around for the division title there toward the end. I think the thing that's going to unravel them, and I feel like I've said it a couple of times on here, is the really late bye week in week 14. That is something that, and I'll use the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an example. The first year Tom Brady, and maybe not the greatest example for my point since they went and won the Super Bowl that year, but they had a late bye like that, and they came limping into they had a bunch of new people on the front end, and then they got to mid-season and kind of limped their way into the bye week, and then once the bye week hit, then they were on a roll. I don't think they lost again, if I recall correctly. Now I don't necessarily have Washington doing that, although they do have a schedule that sets up for them to do well in those last 4 games of the regular season. But I think going into the bye week, they're going to, and they have some really winnable games. So if they end up winning them, then I'm going to look like an idiot. But, some winnable games they're going into the bye those last 3 weeks in November. But I just think injuries and fatigue is going to bite them in the rear as they head toward that.
Dave Preston.
I have them going 6-8-3. My positive bold prediction: Brian Robinson rushes for 1,000 yards despite missing the first month. Negative surprise: coaching changes on the defensive side of the football before the season ends.
All right, George Wallace.
Wow. So I think that this has very good potential to be a 9-10 win team. I do. I think the urgency that they're going to come out and have to play with from top to bottom. Ron Rivera, look, we saw we've talked about year 3 since January. He did that in Carolina. I think the urgency you're going to see these guys play with, it has been a more normal offseason. There are no protocols. There is nothing else. There are no more excuses. Like, this is it. You have your quarterback. You have your playmakers on offense. Hopefully you get by with Chase Young on the shelf for 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it's going to be. And I think with the addition of Brian Robinson, who, by the way, I've seen him walking around without crutches, just has a bandage on his leg. I think he's going to be back sooner than later. I think this team has 9 or 10 wins in them. I do. And I think that you're going to, see the progress that Ron Rivera is hoping for in year number 3, because if not, then you're cleaning house again. And it's very possible. Look, we've done it. How many years? We do it every 3 years around here, every 4 years. So, but I think that I think this team has the potential to win 9 or 10 games.
All right. And I'll agree with you. I believe in Ron Rivera. I said that all along. I think we all believe in what he has done for this team. I'll stick with my premise that I think Carson Wentz with Terry McLaurin will be a good combination. I would have this as a 10-win team, but the Chase Young absence does make me nervous. So I'm going to go with 9-8. It would be a 10-win team, I believe, if they had a healthy Chase Young and a healthier defense to start the season. Instead, I'm going to go 9-8. So
actually, I'm going to give you two real quick. I'm going to give you 2 positive predictions I have for Washington, because I feel like fans are just kind of tuning me out at this point. So number 1, I think Carson Wentz gets hurt before or at some point after the Monday nighter against the Eagles. But I do have him going 2-1 in his quote unquote revenge games, but it opens the door for Sam Howell. And I think Sam Howell ends up being their Kirk Cousins 2.0, in that he was a late round pick who ends up being really good. They're going to end up undervaluing him, and we'll go from there.
It's not going to be Sam Howell to start. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be Heineke if he goes down. But here, you want a bold prediction? Wentz is going to play 16 games. What do you think of that?
Okay.
Well, that would mean he misses one.
Or whatever. 17 games. Smart ass.
See, and on that note, we've got the season.
No wonder fans tune you out.
Yeah,
look, I tuned out. I don't even know what Cam Newton for the other game. Cam's waiting for your call.
I have these earphones on for decoration. I don't even know what I just said. Let me give you some NFL season previews real quick. So in my NFL,
you're supposed to tease everybody to read your piece.
WTOP.com.
Yes.
Quickly, we're running out of time.
Okay, so I'm going to give you. I already gave you the Washington one. I think the Ravens won't just win the AFC North. I have them as the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're going to lose the AFC title game at home to the Buffalo Bills, and that's because I got the Bills over the Rams in the Super Bowl. Maryland's own Stephon Diggs, your Super Bowl MVP. So he and Francis Tiafoe repping the DMV on a national scale here in the next few months.
Yeah, but Flacco's going to beat the Ravens. Flacco's going to beat the Ravens in week 1 as the Jets quarterback. So,
Well, they got based on what I have, they have 4 losses to play with. So,
all right, there you go.
So if you want to make that one of them, that's fine.
Well, and I had the Ravens going to the Super Bowl, but Poe is on the injured list. So that's all.
Man, that's a tough one right there.
Hey,
that is a tough one.
It's going to be a fun fall together. We thank you for providing us on the DC Sports Huddle. We're sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor. Experience the sports fan paradise.
Break.